Hello and welcome back to the Swan Pricing Show. My name is Filip Vucic. I'm a pricing mentor.
And I am Filip Zolota, the owner of Growth Marketing Agency Maoyo.
Hi.
Hi.
We are here, as always, to talk about the specific practices of pricing expert services, which we call the swan pricing, as opposed to duck pricing, as opposed to commodity and commoditized services pricing, right? Okay, so today we have the topic of the minimum pricing engagement, which would be like a condition of work that you give to your clients that says, yes, our prices can vary, so my prices can vary, but there's a minimum amount that you're expected to spend, right? So it's a 3-drink minimum of our work. So I have some things that I wanted to emphasize here, but I first wanted to hear an example from you. I know you have some.
Yeah, for sure. We can take the example in the web development. You need to have and set up the minimal budget for some project scope, depending on the level of complexity. Establishing that, you have the first layer of segmentation, potential clients and customers, which is very important to have the proper control of the situation, pricing terms, and the adequate level of quality. Setting that up appropriately, things are happening in the way you actually want. Web development is a good case. The same thing can be applied in branding, creating and establishing maybe a marketing strategy. In any expertise-based field, you can set up the minimal rates or pricing scope, the budgets for respectable activities.
Yeah, so it's a positioning tool.
Exactly.
It's a positioning tool. So if it functions as a very visible divider between what you do for websites and what people on Fiverr do for websites, right? Because otherwise it's not really that easy to tell with expert services. That's a problem, right? I know next to nothing about cars, but I can tell a difference between a dirty one and a clean one, and a well-cleaned one and not so well-cleaned one, right? But show me 2 contracts and ask me which lawyer is better, or even worse, better for me. I don't know. I know how to read. I know what these words mean, but which of these would be better for me, I have no way of knowing. Or show me a translation into Korean, and one of them is basically Google Translate, and the other one is a work of art, and I have 50-50 chance to guess which one is which, because I have absolutely no way of telling, right?
Yep.
So, but if I knew that these translators have different pricing policies, and let's say that their price per card is equal, but one of them has a minimum level of engagement, that's the serious one. Because if I only want 3 words translated, I'm basically wasting their time, and they know it. So even this is usually found with people who have higher prices, and it should be. But even without having a higher price, it's a separate thing. Minimum level of engagement can clearly state that you're serious and that you're not desperate, right? Because if you are desperate, then $16 is $16 for 30 seconds of translation. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that gives away what the biggest, I think, the biggest proponent of this in the pricing world is Blair Enns. And I think he talks a lot about the minimum level of engagement for creative firms, and he also has this great term that he uses this, he calls the stench of desperation. So clients can tell when you're desperate, even if you're trying to hide it. And you saying yes to basically any suggestion of reducing scope, or simply nonsensical scope that is still going to be paid something, is definitely a big clue that you don't have enough work. And the problem with that is, if you don't have enough work and I see it as a client, I start to think maybe there's a reason why you don't have enough clients. And more often than not, the reason is that people can't really market themselves for whatever the reason. But I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about as a client, what if you're the kind of an expert that nobody wants because you're actually no good? Because I can't tell. I can't, right? Like I said, with expert services, it's very hard for me to look at two houses made designed by two architects and say this one is better. I may like this one better, but maybe it's worse. I don't know, right?
Yep.
Code, even design, I can look at two designer portfolios, and this one does nice stuff, this one does nice stuff. Not a designer. I can't really tell the difference between brilliance and good enough, because my tastes may lead me into this or that direction, but I don't need something that I like. I need something that communicates what I want clearly. And that's hard to see even from portfolios, because I don't know what it was intended to convey.
Exactly.
And maybe it was intended to convey luxury, but it conveys good taste, which is near enough, but not actually what it should be. But it clearly communicates good taste, and I say, okay, that's good design. It's actually not.
And you have, sorry, you have a second component in there, and that is very often clients were micromanaging their partner and engaged with design, whatever. So the final product doesn't need to be the top example of the capabilities of the individual or the company, as you said. So it is also very important to take into consideration in that respectable segment.
Yeah, that's I think what they call a portfolio trap.
Exactly.
Right. You show your work, but since context is really important, it's not really that relevant, right? Without context, and you can see context. That's the problem. And I mean, we are used to minimum levels of engagement in some industries. So people can say, well, that's not going to fly in my industry. Every industry started it for a reason at some point. So can you print one business card? I mean, you can. It's going to cost you as much as 50, and they're going to simply make 50 and throw 49 away.
Yeah.
So sure, go for it. But you can't actually lower that scope between that, because the way the printing presses work, the real work is setting everything up, and then the operator flips the switch and flips it back, and 50 have already been done, right, in a second. So that's why you can't buy less. Or like I mentioned, the 2-drink minimum. Somebody did it first, maybe in the Middle Ages, I don't know, but somebody did it first, right? So it's not preposterous. It's not a wild new idea. It's been with us for ages.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's heretical to say something like this. Have you had a case where somebody rebelled against that? When said...
Yeah, people have the tendency to rebel, that case and scenario, but very often at the end of line, they understand why some things are necessary in terms of scope and similar. For example, in watchmaking industry, If you want one piece, you'll pay the constant and everything like you are building an entire factory and want to produce thousands and thousands of pieces. So it is in some cases mandatory, not only from the perspective of positioning, expertise positioning, but necessary to establish the proper foundation on which base you'll be piling up and delivering other stuff. This specific part of the conversation helped me remind one very cool case in the IT support and MSP service. One of my colleagues told me his story about business. It was even yesterday. When he decided to switch from regular IT support, maintenance of IT systems, etc., to the MSP model, meaning minimal volume of engagement, all the parameters, etc., he lost 80% of the clients and customers. Why? Because they were focused on pricing. They didn't see the additional value, etc., but also that helped him position his business in the respectable position and role where he actually wants to be, a desired state. So short term, he lost 80% of the engagements. It was a pretty much crazy situation at the time financially, but in a month and a half, he simply gathered new clients for whom that was an amazing sweet spot. They wanted the full turnkey solution, full MSP support from his company, and that was it. Okay, the situation was kind of lucky on one way. The situation definitely could go downside, but the point is he was bold enough to make that crazy leap of faith according to his values and when he sees his business long term.
Well, you didn't do much to recommend it with that example, because I think most people would have a heart attack, but he survived, right?
Yeah.
So it's a good story, ladies and gentlemen. But what would be interesting to see that out of those 80%, how much of actual revenue he lost, because losing 80% of clients who demand more than they actually give, right? And they're late with payments, and I think that's a rule that the smallest bills for a company are always the most annoying. You're not going to defer on payment on the biggest people who you owe money to. That could be dangerous. But the smallest ones, yeah, that's annoying. We'll pay that another month. Yeah, maybe don't go jumping in like that, but maybe do if you think you can if you think you can survive that, because on the other side he now probably has a much better work-life balance and profitability. And that was my point. Maybe he lost 80% of clients, and maybe that was like 40% of revenue.
Yeah, but those were primarily price buyers, and that was the problem. Only based on price, they decided to stay with them. And from time perspective, engagement from them as a service providers, that was very demanding. And that was the reason why he did it. It was a leap of faith, but the mandatory one if you want to scale up and go down the wanted route and road. So exactly.
One more thing here. What the minimum level of engagement can give you is room to include some things that you would normally have to charge extra for. So things like changes to a website. Usually people say, okay, I'll deal with two changes, but anything major from that's a new project. That's a new offer. That's a new. And I mean, okay, but then clients don't really like that, because sometimes they have to go through this whole process for this one change, and then it's not worth it, but then it's not really what they want. It's much better to have a minimal level of engagement and say, look, anything reasonable that you want to change here, we'll just fold it in, right? Now you're still the arbiter of reasonable there, but you don't have to nickel and dime them. And usually they won't have, if they know what they want, right? They usually won't have 20 things that they can change.
Yep.
If they don't know what they want, that could happen, but you should be able to firstly tell that. If not, charge them. I think you do that, right? You charge them to make an analysis at the beginning, so
Yeah,
you can see.
for the workshop.
Yeah, go.
Exactly. You go through with all the details, managing the expectations, etc., and then you define the overall scope, make a proper documentation, and then you go into business cooperation in full scope, no matter the service. And that is a good way because you have a tool how to control the situation. And if there are some kind of obstacles, whatever, you can manage that accordingly without impacting the project scope, the satisfaction, and everything. And that's it.
When I talk about this, then people ask, well, how do I stop this turning into a never-ending expanding scope? And we talked about scope creep control, but I think here it's a good question. But the answer would be, at the beginning you set a goal for the project, so not just a list of tasks as a scope, but what are these tasks trying to achieve? So when somebody says, well, could you turn this button pink, you say, okay, and I don't see how this will bring us closer to the goal. So it is another task, but how? And they either have a very good and compelling reason, or more often they say, well, I like it that way. Well, okay, are we doing this for you? Right? No? Okay, then leave my designers alone, please. We can do that, but that's not a part of this because it doesn't go into the direction that we set. So you not only hired me to do this, you also hired me to shepherd this project so we don't get sidetracked, right?
Yep.
Or if you want to be more polite, you can say, well, that's a great idea for phase 2. Right now, you paid for phase 1 and we're doing phase 1 until we get to the goal, and then we can talk about extras. And there's going to be more of them probably. So we'll do a block deal, right? Right now, we would have to probably charge more if that went, because that's clearly not part of this project, because it doesn't lead to the stated goal. And mostly, if you did your homework right and the client knows what they want, this is enough to shield you from most trouble of charging enough at the beginning, so you don't have to nickel and dime them for everything. And they do appreciate this, I think. It's like those places where you get a cup and you can refill it as much as you want, because people are not going to drink hectoliters of the thing, right? And it's pricier on the onset usually, but it doesn't matter because people are not, they don't feel constrained by if I don't know everything perfectly, and I don't know a client, maybe you do, that knew everything that they wanted from a project from the onset and nothing changed, right? that
is happening almost never or never, because
yeah,
simply due to a lack of knowledge in some respectable niches in which we are there for a reason to help them, guide them, and support them. So yeah,
if they understood it all so perfectly, they wouldn't have needed us.
Exactly.
It was funny when I was in uni, I had a venerable old professor from business analysis in business analysis class, and we talked about what's the most important part of the company to analyze, and he said, well, the one that hurts the most, right? That is hurting the most. So it can be management, it can be procurement, it can be operations, it can be anything, right? We said, okay, but what's the priority if nothing is wrong? He said, ladies and gentlemen, if you find a client company where nothing is wrong, congratulations, you're the knight of the round table because you found the Holy Grail.
And that is definitely a good one.
I think it was one of his standard jokes, but it was a really good one because, yeah, there's no such thing. There's no company where everything is like, I mean, in real world, maybe in a fantasy novel somewhere.
But that is a mere truth. People very often see the company from outside and see, oh, it's amazing, very well organized. Yeah, it's the picture we are painting. But the reality is very often something else. More often than not, the best pictures out there are actually diverse from the inside, simply due to my experience.
So one more thing, if you do have a minimum level of engagement, I think it pays to not advertise, it is maybe a wrong word here, but it doesn't pay to spring that up on a client. So don't surprise him with that.
Yeah.
In other words, put that on your website, put that on your LinkedIn profile, right? Simply because that's going to shield you from a lot of time wasters. And yes, some may still knock on your door and say, are you serious about this? And you say, well, yes. But it's going to simply reduce a lot of time wasted in sales conversations or pre-sales conversations. They're not going to go anywhere because like you said, where we were talking before the show, if somebody is price shopping, I'm the worst thing that they can think of, right? I'm the worst solution. That's a really not a good idea, right? So when people ask me in general, should I put my price on a website, right? What's your take on this before I say mine?
Yeah, we are very transparent on that, simply because that is the first layer of segmentation. Who are serious enough, they'll engage, they'll want to know and dig deeper, get to know more, and that's it. But also funny thing is that often what was happening, people who saw the website still tried, can you send me the proposal? Have you some our web? Yeah. So that is the outline from where we are starting, because we are here to help you, but on adequate level. Anything else is not for us. I can help you, I can support you, I can refer somebody else, but not us.
Yeah. Somebody said, so price shoppers are best served by your competition. No, so my answer is usually, I mean, nobody likes when consultants answer the question with "it depends."
Yeah.
And I'm going to sort of not do that. So there's two cases, one of which you described, where putting your prices on your website make perfect sense. We're talking about swan businesses here, right? So expert service providers, professional service providers. So it may be different for other things, but for swan purposes, either you're the cheapest one, and therefore you don't care if the competition sees your price, because they basically can't underprice you for any reason. Doesn't really matter. There's nobody crazy enough to go this low. Maybe you found out how to automate something or something. You have a IP that other people don't. It doesn't really matter why. But if the low price is a part of your competitive advantage, then it makes sense to put in your website. So people don't have to guess if you're going to be the cheapest one. They know you're going to be the cheapest one. And that can work in some cases if you can do big volumes, if it's low touch, so you don't have to be there. So things like SaaS, it can work, right? And the other case is what you described, which is when you want to limit the number of tire kickers that come and say, hey, can you send me a proposal? Yeah, please let me spend 2 hours on this, so you can drag it to somebody else and say, can you do this cheaper? That's so unpredictable. I've never seen that. Okay, I'm being sarcastic.
Never happened.
Yeah, this morning. Doing what you do, putting your prices on the website. It's a good idea because people say, oh, okay, so these guys are not for me. They can roll their eyes. That's for free, right? They can do whatever they like as long as they don't waste your time. That's wonderful. That's a good deal for you, right? Anything else? So if you're somewhere in the middle, you're not trying to push people off, some people off because you need more work or whatever, or you sometimes do want to compete with price, and you're also not the cheapest, so you can be easily undercut by somebody who is. It doesn't make sense. So it's a smiley kind of a graph. So yes at the low end, yes at the high end, and no in the middle. I don't know if you would agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. And there is also an addition to that, when you have some respectable type of expertise service, which is already productized, meaning you have a track record, the scope and everything, then you can have a transparent information about the price, the scope or starting point, because every case and scenario, it's personal or specific, quite unique.
That's what I do.
Exactly.
That's what I do.
That is also the third kind of option which you can find on the market, and that is okay. Everything else, absolutely, as you said, and confirm it.
Yeah, that's I didn't touch on productized services because they're not that usual.
Yeah.
We have to talk about productized services once.
We will.
But that's what I do. So I have a standard thing, well, 3 things, one of which depends on the size of the project. And I also do customs so custom work. So somebody says, yeah, can I do this but not that? Can my spouse, my partner also be in this? Then it's different. But for the standard stuff, there's a standard offer. There it is, you can see it, right? It's time boxed, it's everything that it needs to be. It has a guarantee. That's it, right? That's it.
The same practices with my consultancy practice and the with the agency. The same thing. You have the scope, set up, the system, and that's it. Yeah.
Right. So I think that was it on the minimum level of engagement. I hope that was useful. Do you, from my side, do you have anything else?
No, nothing to add. Yeah.
Cool. Right. So Philip, where can people find you?
People can find me on the LinkedIn and also on my agency page, maoyo.agency, and also on my consultancy practice page, maoyo.consulting.
Cool. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. Also slowly but surely returning to YouTube and TikTok, and fearlesspricing.com. People, thank you for your attention and your time, and see you next time on the Swan Pricing Show. Bye.